Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are going to be installing some new wheel bearings on the Tacoma. In my previous video, I mentioned I suspected I had a bad bearing. The reason for that is when I lifted it up, I had just a little bit of play in that wheel. That's typically a sign of a bad bearing. So I purchased some new ones through Detroit Axle, and we're going to try and get it done today. So stay tuned. So to kick this party off, the first step, obviously get the wheel off. Next thing I'm going to do is remove the caliper, and you don't want to let this just hang, so I'm going to end up bunging it or zip tying it up here to let that dangle. It's going to be a 12 millimeter bolt there, and then two 17 millimeters on the backside. I was able to get the rotor off with a few love taps. Started with this guy, and then we went to this guy, and then we went to this guy. I was able to make that work. So now that the rotor is off, we're gonna work on getting this cap off. Probably just gonna shove something in there, just kind of wedge it out, tap it out, maybe a chisel, something like that. And then we'll remove the cotter pin, and then we'll get our 35 millimeter socket and remove that axle nut. Was able to get the cap off using a little chisel, just kind of working it around the outside. So now that that is off, we can remove the cotter pin. And no, it was not straight. I just straightened that out prior. So now we have access to this 35 millimeter axle nut. I was able to break the axle nut loose. The trick here is to put a jack stand under the stud. That way when you try and rotate it, it stays in place. Right now the splines on the CV axle are still intact with the hub, and I'm not able to push this out of the way. So what we'll do is we'll take a socket with a slightly smaller diameter than the end of the axle there. We'll just bump it to separate those splines, and we should be able to push it out of the way. Now that we got those splines off of each other, we're able to actuate that, which is just what we want. So the only thing left to do is get our 17 millimeter wrench, and we will work these 4 bolts here. The 4 bolts holding the bearings into the knuckle will not come out all the way. In order to remove these bolts completely, we're gonna spray it with our penetrating oil and give it a few love taps. That should crack this seal and give us just enough play to get these bolts undone. So we're just gonna soak this pretty good. Let that do its thing. And we'll go get our sledgehammer. Well, after just a few love taps, we were able to remove the wheel bearings. That was on there pretty darn good, but a little bit of patience. Got it done. Does seem to be quite a bit of debris and kind of some buildup in there, so gonna have to spend some time really cleaning this out good before I put everything back together. I believe the rear seal on the bearing failed, and that caused quite a bit of crud to get packed in there, which is not supposed to happen. So that would certainly explain kind of a grinding sound. I think there's just a lot of stuff in there that shouldn't be. We'll use our 19 millimeter socket to remove the 2 bolts holding on the lower control arm. I undid this clip here that holds the ABS line in. That gives it a little bit more slack. Once we have that slack in there, we're able to pull the knuckle away far enough to slide the CV axle all the way through. That gives us room to tap out this rear seal here. And then once that's punched out, we'll go ahead and clean the surface up. Before we start putting things back together, we're going to take a little bit of our copper anti-seize and we're going to coat this outside surface as well as the inside. This will ensure if we ever have to remove the wheel bearing again in the future, it won't seize up on us. This is our new rear seal. We will pop this guy in the back here and tap it in with our mallet. Now that we got our rear shield pressed in, we put our anti-seize along this mating surface as well as on the inside and on the splines. That should help prevent any further seizing. Also rub some along this mating surface here on the shield. So that'll line up like so. New wheel bearing, everything up. We'll grab our 17mm and tighten these guys down. I also torqued down the axle nut. We put the locking cover on and then we put our cotter pin through to keep that secure. Now we're going to wipe off the surface, make sure it's nice and clean. We'll put some anti-seize on there and then we'll put our rotor on. Now that the rotor's on, we will tap in our hub cover with our rubber mallet. And now we will put them back into place. Now that we've got both brake pads installed, we got our pins through. The only thing left to do is secure our anti-rattle clip. Thanks for watching the install video, guys. I tried to capture every step as it came up, but I'm sure I missed a few here and there. Overall, the install wasn't too bad. I just had to wait a few days to get the parts in, but really wasn't that bad a task. Hope you enjoyed the video and stay tuned for more content.